What is going on, Rotogrinders? We're talking the Thursday night slate. It's going to be a lot of good times, shenanigans for sure, because, we'll talk as far as actives and inactives. They just kind of cracked a second ago. Chargers, Raiders, the last Thursday night of the year. Of course, the Chargers are involved, and of course, goofy snap count's going to be involved too. Why not? Raiders, 51.5 as far as the total of their favorites here, 3.5, so it's high and it's tight. Let's break it down. Let's bring in one Tyler Tamboline. It is, I forgot to say the time. I normally say the time, let people know. Is it Vancouver time? Where are you at there in Canada, Tyler?
Alberta, man. Canada time. No, you're right. Let's go.
Alberta's on the left coast, I believe.
The west coast, the best coast, the mountains, man. I won't say that. I'm actually from the east, but yeah, it's good, man. We're having some good weather up here. The wife's doing some Christmas baking today, so I'm in the mood. And now we got this crazy slate. And then what do the cool kids say nowadays? Got flipped on its head.
I heard one person say that, and yeah, it was totally original. I've never heard that before, but metaphorically, if you can just sort of picture that in your head, that slate getting flipped on its head. And that's kind of what happened with the actives and inactives, right? Because, well, Oakland, there you go. That's one for me. The Raiders, the Las Vegas side. Let's say hi to chat. What's up, chat? Hi, YouTube. Feel free to like and subscribe, hit on the notifications. We'll do our best to knock out all the questions you guys have. And we're going to be here for the next 40 minutes or so, so I imagine we'll have plenty of time to knock out any questions you guys have there regarding the slate. We'll do our best to answer it. Anything that has to do with like snap count, those are going to be your answers. I'm going to yield to you, just so you know, because I don't know how to predict the snap count for one Mike Williams. Well, yeah, the slate was flip on its head because, like you're talking about, for the Chargers, we are kind of sort of expecting Williams to sit. He's not sitting tonight. Keenan Allen's going to give it a go as well. Both are expected to be on what was the exact line that Schefter put out there, Sony put out there, not a pitch count or a rep count, whatever that means. Yeah. Of course, the Chargers have nothing to play for. I don't know why they're playing. I don't know why they would play outside of, maybe Lynn wants them to give it a go because try to save his job. I have no idea. Like maybe that's the thought process. They don't look as bad, but that's the only angle I can come, or they're professionals, they're gamers, they want to give it a go. But they're both active. As far as the inactives, the only one that's interesting outside of those guys is Justin Jackson. He's not playing tonight. He is inactive as far as the Chargers side. We know the Raiders are without four key defensive players: Abram, Arnett, Farrell, Morrow. So they're beat up defensively, and also Ruggs is currently on the COVID list, so he's not going to give it a go either. All right, Tambo. Let's take our screenshot as far as this slate, because like you said, it was flipped on its head, and I thought at least Williams was going to be out. That's what we were told as of an hour ago. Now he's available. I thought Keenan Allen would be, hit and miss, on and off, that kind of thing that you can rely on. And now they're both going to at least dress, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think you just said it. It's going to come down to a lot of different things tonight. As far as if you got multiple entries, I think that's a good thing on a site like this. You're going to have to take some chances. Nobody's going to be able to tell you for sure. I always look at it in most sports when have situations like this. If they're giving it a go, I'm going to mix them in. I'm not going to shy away. I think that's what most tend to do and think, maybe I'll go this way or maybe I'll do that and change it up. I'm going to try and do it instead and just try and mix them in and go with it. But I would look at certain rules, right? Now we don't have to go into it completely here, but that's sort of the benefit of Lineup HQ. The obvious, reason behind having an optimizer like this is to get after it. And you've got to look at it from a certain perspective around who plays what. So, you might want to say, like we were looking before, I think Tyron Johnson as the replacement for Mike Williams, right? The 1-for-1 replacement. So I've got builds here I got to fix afterwards. That's how I was setting it up. If you have the money left in those builds, if you've already got them pre-built, you can try and get up to Williams, and that's sort of your 1-for-1 if you look at it that way. If you don't have builds yet and you're just getting after it now, then I would look at, using some Williams, using some Allen. I think Williams may be in better shape than Allen. I was more worried about Allen coming into tonight if they were to go. So I would say that as well. I would, again, still, and people are asking about season long. I know we're talking about DFS and Showdown slate here, but the playoffs are out there, so try and answer it. I think the idea is to still use them. I know it can suck and it doesn't always work out, but if they're going to go, you got to think they're going to go for the, what is a snap count? What is a rep count? Like you said, by definition, we understand and we know it. What will it actually look like? Nobody will be able to tell you that. The second part of what I was going on there on a little mini tangent here, Dean, is separating some of the usage. So I think Jalen Guyton was already in play for me. He's still in play for me. Like I said, I'm looking at it more as a 1-for-1, less Tyron Johnson for Mike Williams, or if you want to take the risk, play him for him. For Keenan Allen, guy like, KJ Hill, right? If you're going down to that one, maybe you're not doing that anymore. And I think obviously he comes out of more lineups, but if you've got 20 plus, sprinkle them into one or two if you want, because it could come down to that. Also, there's a chance here with them, just playing whatever snaps they do. And maybe, I don't know how you thought, we can talk about this in a second, that the game was going to go. But if you had any love for the Raiders side of things, just to show up because no one expects them to type of thing, maybe they still do show up and put on a good show here, then maybe, it gets that little bit of a back and forth. And then you could have some lineups that still mix those guys in and just look for that late deep shot with some of these cheap guys. So I guess first off, Dean, what's your thoughts on how this game's going to go, right? You've got the spread there. You've got the total. What were your thoughts regardless of these last minute changes on what you think is going to happen here tonight?
If I thought, Keenan Allen was good to go, Mike Williams was good to go, I thought this line was a little bit, I know the Chargers have been found every way possible to lose, but I don't know if the Raiders have a right to be a 3.5 point favorite, especially that hook. I like the Charger side with the 3.5 points. I feel like it's just stay close. But, with Allen being dinged and Williams being dinged, and we're not privy. We have no idea how, available they may or may not be. Maybe they shoot them up and they play well in the first half, and the second half it wears off and they're hurting and they can't play. And also it's the whole pitch count thing is well, if the Raiders are up by 3 touchdowns in the middle of the third quarter, Williams and Allen aren't going to be out there. I think that's if it's game dependent, if it's a close game, maybe they're more likely to give it a go, that kind of thing. But again, they have nothing to play for outside of pride, but nobody would fault them for sitting if they're legitimately hurt. And also, it's worth noting Eckler was questionable too. Eckler's going to play, but it's just worth noting that he's another guy. Why would you run him to the ground if he's currently questionable? He's going to play. That was one that's at least surprising as far as who's going to go. But yeah, and of course that Raiders defense is all beat up. The Chargers defense has had some injuries throughout the season as well too. I feel like it's going to be one of those fun games between two terrible teams. I think we're going to get. I like the over in 51.5. Maybe it's a bad call, but I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout.
Yeah, I like that. I guess I don't feel great. I don't think it's a smash over here like everybody's suggesting. I think there is a possibility that could be a lot closer. We could end up sweating out this number if you are taking the over and come down to the end and maybe come up just short, or a missed field goal along the way, or something that costs the over, because I think a lot of people are expecting that. But at the same time, like you said, could be sloppy as well with this sort of nothing in play, no real need for, the Chargers are just horrible. Like you said, if the Raiders win, they still need a bunch of stuff to happen. So I guess I would build for some of that. The one key point that you made there, I think everyone should monitor, and when you're building your lineups, definitely associate this with it. That's sort of the mini edge, is thinking of it that way. If you're going to build a Raiders lineup that wins, if you're going to put Josh Jacobs in the captain slot, the Raiders D to get after them because these guys aren't making plays for them, then I probably wouldn't, just because you have the salary to spend, I wouldn't run it back with Allen and Williams in those lineups, maybe, because like you said, if it gets to half and they're out of it completely, why push those guys any further? There's just no point. So, that would be what I'd say for that, and why I think some of those other guys are still viable. I think Guyton for sure. I think Tyron Johnson with his snap count lately, even with what's been going on, obviously with Williams going out, that made a bigger deal. But I think, those guys can still be mixed around. Just maybe use the player groups to set it up so that your max of one on some of these lower end guys like KJ Hill and, Keenan Allen, or like your Williams and Johnson. You can set those things up so that you're only using one or the other, and then you're building your lineups. And again, I've talked about this in the past. I love Lineup HQ for the aspect of being able to, I call it virtual hand building, get my lineups in there, through the program and building them. And then I go through and, fine tooth comb it. And the ones I like, I'm going to save into my lineups. And then I'm going to be able to go back through and get those there tonight. Another guy the chat keeps talking a lot about, and I think this goes with both of these guys. You mentioned Eckler. One key note on Eckler just off the top here is that he, to me, anyway, I think to everybody, he was going to be by far the highest owned captain. I wonder if, it's definitely going to come down some. People are going to take shots on Allen, Williams. They're going to go all around now to try and get unique and be different. But I do wonder if, for me, not that I wonder, he's going to come down. What I'm trying to say is that I definitely think I would still leave him in captain in a bunch of lineups because I still liked him. And even when those other guys were in the lineup, since he's been back, they've been playing some great games. He's been putting up DK points without even scoring touchdowns. I think he has one. And then on top of it, he, had the one bad game, but that was the game they were blown out 45-0 by the Patriots. So, I'm not going to shy away from that because the others are going to move them around some now, and they'll be able to fit in with some of that extra money guys like that. Yeah. And I wish, this would be the night, producer Devin, to play the blender clip, play whoever you want. That's literally this slate to a T. So find a spot for later. We've been waiting on the ability. I don't know if we still have it because we switched back, but here nor there. The second thing is, Dean, what are your thoughts on a one Hunter Henry? Because I think, the conversation around him is, high floor, low ceiling. Normally the opposite, we're looking for a good floor and a high ceiling, but he's a guy that could fit in your lineups to round it out where it's sort of in that mid-tier range. Do you have any thoughts on Mr. Hunter Henry with these guys coming back?
I mean, I just feel like he should be better than he has been, but you have to think that maybe a little bit more shuffles his way with the injuries. I was also thinking that even kind of dig even deeper, the potential. And that my plan was that, Allen and Williams are going to be out. I thought Parham would be kind of sort of so interesting. They might run some two tight end stuff. That guy's, when he gets in the field, he catches touchdowns. He's done it before.
XFL, baby. XFL. Donald Parham Jr., man. That's your guy.
Yeah, but I mean, Henry's not one of those guys where I'm seeking him out. But if he's the last man in a lineup where it makes sense to play Henry, sure, I have no issues with it. I know that's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but he's playable. I'm not thoroughly enthused. I'm not seeking him out, but I'm not Xing him either. And I should say I'm pretty much mostly playing cash games tonight. I've been a couple tournaments too, and I don't mess with any tournament that gives like 35% to first place. That's just not for me. I understand why they exist. I understand why people play them, but that's just not something I dabble in. What is your mode of attack? You talk about lineup HQ, and I have another question following that, but your mode of attack, how many lineups you planning on rolling out tonight?
Yeah, tonight I wasn't planning on doing a lot anyway. Like I was going to do 20. I did have a good feel on one. I feel bad for the guys playing the 3K tonight. There's a huge 3K million maker out there, like 700 plus people, but man, that'd be a tough one, especially if you only got the single bullet as most would to try and figure it out and go after it. So, I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I do like this. I think you brought up one good point. I saw you just tease it out there on Twitter about some dead lineups out there. There's absolutely going to be some dead lineups. Again, the sad part is when they hit, because people that didn't change it and go, oh shoot, it ended up hitting anyway. That's great because the game flow or whatever happens. I hate to see that, but I'd like to say that it's a bit of an edge, but I do certainly like that aspect of it. The other thing is, just quickly back to Hunter Henry. I was trying to get you to talk me into him to be able to play him in like captain, because I do wonder if, like I said, we already know Eckler's popular there. I like Eckler. He's one of my favorite captains. And like I said, I like that the ownership's going to come down at least a little bit because of these other guys and people taking speculation plays. But Henry, again, these 10, 13, 14, 15 point games are pretty much without TDs or, one TD or something like that. This used to be, a game flow matchup, right, against the Raiders. It's not like it's been crazy this year. There's other teams that are much worse, but I still like the ability there. And what if the other guys, like say, are out or things happen, this could end up being like a safety blanket there for Herbert. He had a decent game against Atlanta last week, but the week before just got crushed against New England. So I think this could be and which affected all of his receivers, obviously, but I think this could be a bit of a good spot here. 8 targets last game. The New England game sort of throw it out the window, 10-7. The games before that, you said it yourself. We sort of expected Henry to be better. This would be a spot, right? Island game, nobody really on him. People don't want to play him. Another pure speculation play because of everything that we have going on that we've already beat to death. But I think the idea there would line up. And I don't think he's going to be very popular at captain. It leaves you a lot of money to put into play and then just sort of build your lineup around that. Definitely getting Herbert in there as we show him there up on the screen. I do love that once you've got him in there, but what are your thoughts on that? And then maybe what was the follow-up question that you had?
Yeah. So my follow-up question, you're talking about lineup HQ, and I use it all. I don't build, 50, 100 lineups, whatever, but I'll use it just kind of build what's popping. And when I kind of manipulate stuff and that makes sense. And just kind of help me confirm ideas or maybe give me new ideas. But we've seen here on multiple times, and with people putting in rules, you put in rules, and the rules are they're smart, they make sense, they're logical. But, and I'm sure you probably know where I'm going now. I think was it the Seattle game, Metcalf. We saw in a captain, you see a receiver and captain with no Wilson is not in the optimal. But because people aren't putting the rule in, they're saying if I have a receiver and captain, give me that quarterback. Is there a logical reason to go against the grain and say, despite the fact this is quote unquote dumb, we're talking about a sample size, a 1 game sample size out of 1,000, 1,000,000 possibilities. Do you ever say, well, I know that's what makes sense, and this is what you're supposed to do in Showdown, right? And this is the inner blender me, I suppose. But we've seen it multiple times now and it's somebody binking it, where it's like, those are a bunch of players that like people mostly like, but just not that particular shuffle as far as a lineup constitution. So is that something you're considering, or those are just anomalies for you?
Well, no, I think there's a strategy aspect to it for sure. And it's one that most people probably overlook. I think the biggest thing would be a guy like DK Metcalf works in that situation, because what happens is DK Metcalf is so expensive. And then with DraftKings, obviously you got the multiplier factor in there. So he goes into the captain slot, you get that increased price. And now when everybody else twofold, one, everybody's putting Russell Wilson in next, right?
Yeah.
That's the automatic thing. So once you don't put Russell Wilson in, you're already getting yourself unique. Secondly, the idea would be that once a guy that expensive is in your captain, and then you think about how expensive Russell Wilson is to go with that. Now you're leaving yourself very thin for the last 4 positions, and you're needing more punts to happen, or not punts in the game, punt plays to work for you, or you're needing more things to go that route. You could put a guy like Metcalf in there. Let's say it's, Russell Wilson up against a lesser quarterback. Let's say it's a Nick Mullins in a division game against the 49ers. Mullins is much cheaper. If Wilson has a good game, it's a high likelihood that Mullins, the other way around. Mullins has a good game. It's a high likelihood that Wilson has. Their quarterbacks are correlated. Showdown and Superflex is a place where we get to play both them if we want, but you can go with the quarterback of the other side for cheaper, still get some nice points out of him, and then look how much more money you have per spot remaining. So for me, I like to make sure that when I have a cheap receiving captain in the captain slot, that I'm definitely pairing it up. I'm still mostly pairing up a guy like Metcalf, or tonight, a guy like Keenan Allen. I'm mostly pairing it up, but Keenan Allen's another prime example. This would be a guy tonight, just keeping it relative, where he's expensive. Herbert's expensive, right? If you go over to the captain slot here, what do we got for the captain pricing on these guys? I just got some stuff in front of me. 17.7 and 16.5, right? So if you put in Allen, and most people will automatically click in Herbert. Well, first off, Allen's a PPR guy to death. Like, that's what he does. He could catch 10 balls for 110 yards, no touchdowns, and just rack the points up that way, but not really be, the ultimate power scorer in the sense where now it doesn't mean Herbert goes off. Herbert's not likely to throw 3 80-yard bombs to Keenan Allen to get him to hit his score, if you follow. So there's that. And then you'd be able just to pound in some more of these mid-tier values, whereas most people are doing what you said with, Brian Edwards, Parham, you mentioned Parham, but we're going to get to Brian Edwards, Zay Jones, Foster Moreau. Like, they're needing these magical things to happen, and they're hoping, again, twofold: one, that it actually happens, or two, that they found the magic beans or the magic potion down there to make it work. They're looking for this needle in a haystack, when in reality, if you look at the winning lineups, oftentimes it's just a matter of leaving money on the table or still building it accordingly. We had that New England one a couple weeks ago with $800 Bird, and Myers was cheap, and they just used those 4 guys on the other side. It was all pretty chalky, but I think it left $5,900 on the table, and 2 people had it, or so, or maybe it was unique. I think, actually, I can't remember if it was a solo millie or a dual chop, but it was really unique still. And it was and it used all the popular plays just in a way that made sense and still left a bunch of money on the table. So, I'm looking at a lineup in front of me right now where there's over $5K left on the table.
Yeah.
And it still makes a whole lot of sense. It still involves a lot of big names that you'd be like, oh, they could all definitely have a nice floor and a pretty good ceiling here. And basically just relies on Hunter Henry hitting as the captain.
So it's got Brian Edwards in it.
No, doesn't have Brian Edwards in it. I'm not going to give you all the keys, Dean. I can't give you all the plays. You're just playing cash anyway, man. So you focus on that. But let's talk about some.
Stay in my lane. Is that what you're saying? Stay in your lane.
You wanted to create the lane, man. There's a Lamborghini out there waiting for you, but you want to go in the slow lane. That's up to you, man. But let's talk about some of these receivers over on the Raiders side, because that's
let me ask you this before
sure.
Before you flip over to the Raiders. Let me ask you this: if you're making rules tonight, and it sounds like you're willing to play Keenan Allen, you're willing to play Mike Williams. Is that fair? What I'm hearing you're saying, like you're willing to play him. You're playing enough lineups. They're not necessarily optimal for obvious reasons in the quote unquote cash lineup, but for sure there's upside in tournaments. If you're playing them in tournaments, are you putting in a rule? If I'm playing Mike Williams, I won't play Tyron Johnson, and vice versa. Or if I'm playing Keenan Allen, I won't play KJ Hill.
Yeah, that's what I was saying with that's one of the rules. I think producer Devin showed it off here for us, but I was saying, like, I would put that as a group myself. I would, right? I don't love it personally. Like, I would set it up something like that where we know, like I said, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but we know there's sort of the 1-for-1 replacements. So that's a prime example. Like, look at the difference in price between Allen and Hill. I mean, the other thing, this one's a bit aggressive because those two are so far apart, but you could use Mike Williams and Johnson, I think, would be more likely where I'd feel better about it. Again, either could happen, but I think in that one, I might build like a really nice Mike Williams lineup and play it if I feel it's going to be unique enough still and be in pretty good shape and looks good to me. And then I might just import it replicate it, like, set it up in front of me and literally just take out Mike Williams
1v1
and put in Johnson and leave the money, because most people aren't going to do that. And then on top of it, you're committing to your core, right? It's Showdown. You can build a bunch of different ways, but even people that build 150 lineups for Showdown that are setting it up with, different scenarios, I know most that do it will still stick to like 3 scenarios. The game goes like this, the game goes like that, or the game goes like that. And they'll build, maybe 50 lineups for each. And that's still, at least they've got 50 lineups in the mix. If the game goes that way, yes, the other 100 may be trailing behind, but who knows? Some of these games get wild in the second half and then they start piling up there as well. So, it's all how you build. We're trying to set you guys up in the best success as far as that way goes. But I'm definitely still going to play some Keenan Allen and some Mike Williams and just hope for the best. I like Eckler and Henry for Chargers in the captain slots.
Yeah, Eckler's my favorite. Like he's got a route, to get 100 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving. Like both those things are possible. Probably not together, but he's definitely one of those guys. And also 10 catches. He can do all that, assuming he's healthy and if he's playing. And he seems like the healthiest of the bunch. So he's my favorite player on the Chargers. Do want to mention this before we jump over to the Raiders. We're now offering subscribers. This is going to go ahead and drop in the chat if you guys want to check it out there. Hey, YouTube, I see your questions there on YouTube. We'll do our best to knock them out as soon as possible, but we're going to run through this slate, and then I'll scroll back up and catch some of those questions, and feel free to fire some new ones. This link being dropped in chat, feel free to check this out as well as far as the new promo we have going on here at RG. Subscribers, you can now have the option of getting a premium subscription to just one sport or a combination premium, which includes pretty much anything with the exception of NASCAR. That would include, college football, MMA, soccer, esports, NBA right around the corner. And, Tambo, I have my Rotogrinders season-long draft tonight at 8:00. So I'm going to be auto-drafting, I think, the first couple picks as I'm making lineups. Do you dabble in the NBA? Is that for you or not so much?
Oh, yeah, I'm excited about this year, getting back into it. Not messing around with the preseason too much, throwing a couple lineups in here and there, just trying to get back to it. Obviously, a nice little break from golf right now, the Christmas season, everything, trying to enjoy a little bit of family time where I can, but, mostly focusing on NFL. We've got this tonight. The 2-game slate on Saturday is going to be awesome. A million up top again there. And then Sunday on DraftKings has some of the best tournaments I've seen ever in a while. Well, at least in a while, maybe not ever, but the $1,500 and a couple other things over there, man, they all look pretty good. So I'm excited for this week, especially across the board, but Sunday I'm most excited for. Tonight will be a lot of fun just with, like you said, being able to play different angles this game. But like I said, we can talk about these Raiders wide receivers, man, because that's one where we know Henry Ruggs is not coming back. There's no rep counts. There's no snap counts. He's out.
Zero's the rep count. And by the way, yes. I forgot to mention, I failed. I did my job poorly. You get $10 off. That's the promo. I only told half you guys. $10 off your first month for the combination premium sports, or just if you want to just want to play basketball, your single sport RG premium, you get $10 off your first month. A link should be dropping in chat momentarily. So yeah, Ruggs is out. The home run hitter there for Las Vegas. How does that change things from a receiving perspective?
I don't know. I think the biggest thing for me is just pick your spot. It's like, it's Derek Carr. So it's always putting a little bit of faith on that arm first off. And, there's been times this season when he's looked great and there's been times when he's looked not so great. So last couple games have been pretty strong. It's something where you're going to have to pick your spot and pick your guys. But for me tonight, I like Renfrow. I think Aguilar is getting a lot of the love. We know Waller always gets the love, so can never hate on Darren Waller, the baller Darren Waller. That's the guy. Love this guy, But for me, I really do like Renfrow. Just thinking about the options of targets, the ability for him to get there. For me, just as a plug-in guy, I'm not putting him in captain or anything. I like him in the flex, but I'm saying like this is a guy that's kind of like Hunter Henry to me, where I expected to see a little bit more, and now he starts to get that opportunity. And then the other guy, if not doing that, I really like going down to the guy you mentioned earlier, Bryan Edwards, rookie, sort of the other guy that we can see stand out. Yeah, I love the Hunter Henry captain call. The chat keeps talking about it. I'm in on that. I definitely like that one. But Bryan Edwards, man, super cheap, hasn't done anything. Anybody who's watching game logs is not going to be on him, really. It's a little bit of the conversation around today in different sites, articles, content, everything that's out there. But the price is right, man. Like for a guy like that, another rookie, they're going to want to see something out of him. So I think him, I don't know. I think it's too obvious with Aguilar and Waller. So if they both hit, then, we're probably going to see a pretty chopped up slate. So I'm trying to look away from that as much as I can and just get around it. And for me, it's Renfro and with Edwards versus that. And then I don't mind building some lineups that will have Josh Jacobs at the captain.
Sure.
And just flipping it completely, like I talked about earlier. That's sort of the other way to go, where you can call it a hedge if you want, if you really do like this Chargers side. But I think that's the other thing, is that, everyone loves the Chargers side because there's so many other exciting guys to talk about. The injuries that just happened late, where it's not the injuries, I guess, but the late change in news. So don't forget about this Raiders side. That's all I'm saying, right? They're even the favorite in the game, yet it seems like everyone just wants to talk about Chargers. You could definitely have a slate where the Raiders come out and just pound them. We've seen it, or at least get up early, and then that changes the game flow, because a guy like Josh Jacobs, that's why I'm talking about him in the captain. That's why I like him in the captain, because the game flow, the way it sets up for him and the way we know that he gets used by Gruden is if they're up. So if they're up, it's probably because of him. Maybe he ran a touchdown in, or maybe he got off to a nice start with an 80-yard run and then something happens like that. So I do like that aspect of it. So if I'm going that way, I like using him. The chat's asking about a guy like Carr at captain. What's your thoughts on just even quarterbacks at captain tonight, Dean? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, the cash game perspective is I want like the guy that's going to guarantee the ball in his hands. But like from a tournament perspective, if you're going to play a quarterback in captain, you want a quarterback that has multiple routes to get there. And Carr really doesn't have multiple routes to get there outside of, I guess, throwing for 350 and 3 or 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. Like that's how he kind of gets there, I suppose. Or if the game's just a horrible game and it's like 20-10 or something like that, and he's a part of 2 touchdowns, sneaks one in for the 1 or something like that. So it's a general rule, and I'm sure you can speak to this as well. I want the quarterback with legs in the captain, but as far as a foundation for a cash game, I like the idea of a quarterback. But I think I prefer Herbert over Carr, and I know it's a little bit more expensive and it's a little bit tricky as far as making it work from a cap perspective. But I guess your thoughts as far as Carr versus Herbert. I don't think I'm playing Carr in captain.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If you are, I'm not saying you can't. Obviously, definitely a way you could go here. There's enough cheap guys you could use with them, a Renfro and a guy like Edwards, and then still fit some good guys into your lineup. But I think one thing it's just a make sure thing, is that if I'm putting, like you mentioned, these guys not the best legs on them, but if I'm putting a guy like Carr in captain, I want 2 of his receiving core in the flex.
Yeah.
So you can pick your 2 and how you think the game flow goes, but I definitely want to have a couple of them in the flex, because I think, that's realistically the only way he gets there. Obviously there's a scenario where he sneaks in or something, but himself on a quarterback sneak or something, but I just don't think they've got other guys to use for that. They also have backups to Josh Jacobs. There's a lot of guys they can bang with when they get down to the 1-yard line. So it's, could Carr sneak one in? Absolutely. But then, it's still going to be a lot for him to get there in captain, I think. So I'm definitely going to like plugging him in with a couple other guys to make sure it works that way.
One of the other cheapies that's kind of popping for me for the Chargers, the backup there for Eckler. If something happens to Eckler, Balaj will get much more work. Kelly is available today. He was a healthy scratch last game, but now I think he's just taking Justin Jackson's spot, who's inactive. But my impression is they don't really care so much for Kelly, so I think it's going to be mostly Eckler and Balaj. And Balaj is going to get touches at 2.4K, so that's good enough for me. I think he's got to be in your pool.
Yeah, again, depends what you're doing with how many lineups you got. I actually like the Josh Kelly side. He's even cheaper, and I think that the idea would just be, like you said, the healthy scratch is awesome to me, because this time of the year and trying to get in there, and they really have nothing else to lose. Why not just throw the rookie into it, get some reps? We've seen it, again, not putting him in this class at all. Akers is on another level, but it took a while for certain teams to get after certain plays. Josh Kelly hasn't shown us much, but he hasn't shown them much either. So now would be the time to give him a shot in a matchup against the Raiders. Again, I would build accordingly, meaning if you're looking at it from that sense, not in the captain by any means, I'm talking about more if he's in your flex, I would look for something like maybe the Chargers D in your flex. I would look like it, for maybe a Herbert and a receiver for captain and flex where, they've got there, or, Herbert, Eckler, and a receiver with the Chargers, and then throw a guy like Kelly in and just pick a receiver on the other side, even if you leave a bunch of money, because I think that's sort of the build that it would be. It would be more the reason he gets in the game is because the Chargers do their thing, get there. The Raiders put up a stinker, whatever you want to call it, where they don't show up, right? Lay an egg on a Thursday Night Island game, or if it's a rough game and it goes like that, I could see that happening. So I like him. He's cheap. I don't hate the Balaj call. I just, like I said, I think the idea of having a healthy Kelly is a guy that you could use in there and put him in as just a backup play on a night when it's already going to be a night where you're getting off the board and getting more unique with your stuff. So I wouldn't hate that play as well, Dean.
I feel like I wouldn't play Kelly with Eckler. Like maybe something happens to Eckler. Maybe he's not as healthy as we think. That's sort of a thought there, but I don't really know. And the kickers. Let's talk about the kickers. Carlson and Badgley. What are they doing for you?
The money badger, man. I don't know. The only thing I know is
you made that up. I've never heard that before.
No, that's his nickname. And then he was like, they were taught the minute they mentioned it the other night, last time they were on a primetime slate, he misses. So, this is just one of those things that, again, I'm just more about setting up a rule. I'm a max of one kicker, even on Thursday night games, which typically are always the worst or seem to fail us somehow. I really still only like using one. The idea is that, sometimes you'll get a game where they just can't make it happen, but both these Ds are pretty bad. So I think, at least where they sit this point in the year, I think the Chargers are just a whole different team. If people think about all the injuries throughout the entire season, before it even started, throughout it, they'll be a much better team moving forward. Obviously, having Herbert changes things for their franchise going forward. They still, I think it was Jeff Feinberg mentioned on Twitter before, but he said, it still can be a winning season for a team like this when they find their quarterback, right? Who everyone's going after. And if you're into the sports cards, Dean, that's a card to have right now. The new Prism stuff is out with your guy, Justin Herbert.
Oh, yeah.
He's the guy to have. Yeah. A lot of people are making a lot of money on his cards right now. So he's sort of the next big thing. They're expecting more from him. Tonight's the perfect night. So I think that's, the team is still good, but both of them are pretty rough right now. So I don't know. I like I said, I don't feel like the 52.5 or 53 is a slam dunk I'm so pumped that I've got the over that it's definitely going to happen. I think it'll be a sweat, man, but it always is. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying I really think it's going to come down to like 48 and we need it, the touchdown to go over, and then we get the field goal for 51 and we're all pissed. But so maybe think about that, but that's just my thoughts, a little bit of a gut or intuition, seen it plenty of times, but I do like, using one of the kickers. That's fine. One of the defenses, that's fine, but I do like to separate them myself.
Yeah, I'm more likely to play the kickers than defenses. I understand that the defenses probably have a higher ceiling. If like two goofy things happen, they can put up like a 25. I just think that's, less likely to happen. I guess you can get 5, 4, 5.
I was just going to say, I like the Chargers D definitely better because, like you said, sort of who's going to make a bigger mistake. And, right now, to me, it's been Belichick making rookie quarterbacks look bad has been a thing. So when Herbert got roughed up there 45-0, that can happen. But I'm saying who's going to be more likely in my mind to make a mistake here? I've definitely seen some big ones from Derek Carr in the past. So I would definitely use some Chargers D. And like I said, that's why I don't mind a couple of onslaught lineups where, you just are running it out like a 5-1 or a 4-2 there, because they could definitely make some mistakes. And then you just put like a Waller or a Waller and an Aguilar, or a Waller and a Renfro, or pick one and run 5-1. But I'm just saying, if you have two on that side, it could just be the pass catchers that Carr is going to rely on down the stretch if they get behind. And that's with like Eckler and the captain, Chargers D, run it down from there and then decide, right, who's going to put up the points for them, and then see what that looks like when you're going through it. But a lot of people are feeling Renfro or feeling Aguilar here. And we didn't talk a lot about him. I just think the price tag, the ownership, everything that goes with it, it's a lot, but that can work out. It's just how you're using them. You have to be careful of it.
And this is a guy who was written off like years ago, right? It's just like a bust, and he's just kind of resurged. Like, good for him. And I guess it's worth noting, if you think that the Raiders will be down, you can maybe, as a cheapie, Jalen Richard's not crazy. He's more of like the third down receiving back. Even Booker might get worked into some degree. And, they phase out Jacobs a little bit, just a pinch. If you want to like build that line, if you think that the Chargers are going to be up by a couple of touchdowns late. About 4 or 5 minutes or so before we step aside and get out of here, let's knock out as many questions as possible from the chat. I'm going to scroll up and see what we may have missed. Maybe we missed it, and please write it again. Let's see. Questions from the chat. Eckler versus Jacobs. I am going to have more Eckler and Jacobs. Of course, both are fine. I'm sure you're going to have shares of both. Who do you feel more confident about?
I've got more Eckler for sure. Like I said, Jacobs are going to be in those particular builds, as I mentioned. One thing quick back on Aguilar is just the ownership on DraftKings is there, and obviously you can make it happen. But I do like Aguilar if you're playing on FanDuel, because FanDuel, if he does do something tonight, it's likely to be a touchdown, and that would matter, even if it is just a short touchdown or something like that. So using Aguilar and Waller over on FanDuel and then getting different elsewhere, I think that's fine, because they're the more likely pass catchers when it comes down to it, as far as that's concerned. Whereas most people will be plugging Jacobs into their lineup and just hoping that he runs one in or runs a couple short ones in. So, Super Panda Bear, we talked about Keenan. It's, if you got one lineup, make the call If you got more lineups, play them. Like I think I'm playing them. Like I said, I know I'm playing them, but I said I think it comes down to your risk appetite and how many lineups you have and what you're deciding to do. If you're playing one lineup as entertainment value in the $10 with 500K up top, definitely recommend that you give him a shot, because who cares? If you're really playing to win it and he's playing and you think it's going to happen, then I would roll it, because I wouldn't play safe, dupe with everybody, and not have yourself a chance to the top. If you can find a lineup without him that you like, that's not safe, that you still feel good about making it to the top, then by all means go ahead. But that's just my 2 cents on it.
Your thoughts as far as lineup construction, 3-3, 4-2, like players on each side. You have a thought tonight? Is that something you consider, generally speaking?
Oh yeah, I think again, I know producer Devin dropped the link in the chat earlier. If you guys aren't signed up, definitely recommend you check it out. One of the number one articles I read every week is Eric Beimfor's Slate IQ. Every slate, I should say, he puts it out every single one for 2 gamers, for 1 gamers, everything, and he's got the leverage of what really people are using and what you can get leverage on to be able to build these lineups out. If you want to show it off there, Dean, right quick, it's something people can see. Steve, you're asking about Mike Williams. I was saying this earlier. You're probably just arriving late. That's all good, man. I appreciate the question. Just wanted to say, I felt better about him before Allen. So I'm definitely liking Williams still. I'm using some Allen, but I like Williams more. I already liked him. Eric, great point. We didn't talk about those guys. I was trying to get Dean there earlier, and Dean being the great company man that he is.
What did I do? What did I screw up on?
No, I'm loving you, man. You were talking promos, company promos, core fours, the new setup, everything we can do, which I love. But just to answer the question now, Eric, I don't mind it. I like Brian Edwards. I think if you look at the ownership, the 2 of them, it will probably be a little bit more on Edwards. He seems to be the popular name of the day. So just to make a long story short, I like Zay Jones as a sneaky play there. Yeah, no problem, Steve. It's all good, man. I appreciate you asking that question, man. I was saying, Paul, again earlier with Williams, I was already liking Williams to start the day. I wasn't as worried about him as many people were. And I was thinking Allen being their superstar, hold him out. Why bother? I know they're both in now, but for me, I still like Mike Williams more. That's just my opinion.
Somebody asked as far as the FanDuel MVP, I prefer Herbert over Carr. There's no tax. It's all, I don't know. Yeah, you play FanDuel as well. It doesn't cost you anything. They don't give you 1.5, as far as the asking price. So you want to get the player that's going to score the most fantasy points over there, just the way they work there. There's no 3-point bonus as far as getting 100 yards, receiving. So and it's more touchdown dependent. So the scale, the way FanDuel works, long story short, is that quarterbacks tend to benefit in their scoring system. And I think Herbert is going to be the biggest scorer tonight. Carr, sure. Eckler, sure. But I think Herbert, in tournaments, you can get to like Jacobs. And I guess goofy enough, if you want to play, I still prefer Waller over, in that kind of circumstance over a guy like Allen or Williams. But again, in tournaments, by all means, have yourself a good time, especially the ones that's loaded at the top, like you're referencing, with 35% going the first place. Be as ambitious as you want to be. We do have to step aside and get out here. I think as you're just kind of running through and talking to the chat, and I believe you mentioned you were hitting out the Zay Jones conversation. I mean, I don't know if you have $1,000 left, you can play him. Nobody's excited to play Zay Jones, but he's there, and he'll probably get 4 or 5 targets, something like that. Is that good enough? Maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like if you're down to just Brian Edwards and you got the money to go up and you think it'll be different, then by all means. I just think sometimes that portion gets overlooked. Whereas, like I said earlier, with the New England slate where Damiere Byrd was $800 and everyone's like, got to pivot off him. You can also just build accordingly. I've got a Brian Edwards lineup with $7,600 on the table that I'm looking at. But the lineup makes sense to me. It's a game flow that I see happening. He happens to be one of the pass catchers that's coming back. It's a 4-2 setup that has the leverage on tonight. All these things that I'm seeing is sort of why I was looking at it. So, I'm just using that as a prime example where I'm not going to overthink it. I don't think when there's $7,600 on the table, I need to move off of Edwards because he's slightly more owned than Zay Jones to play Zay Jones, who I've never seen do a thing. And if he does it, good for him. But like I said, I've got more faith in the rookie. Ruggs is out. Why not go to the backup rookie? Check that thing out. And yeah, last thing, everyone asking, they're both supposedly on, and everyone's called it the PC, the pitch count. But that's what that is.
I was trying to figure what that was. I mean, PC, Mac, what's going on in the chat? I didn't realize that was pitch count. Go ahead.
No, it's just funny because we made the joke up earlier that everyone's gonna, call it a pitch count, thinking about like a pitcher in the MLB being on a pitch count. But definitely Appreciate all you guys. Love your support. Keep checking us out on these shows. There's gonna be plenty more to go with the playoffs. It's not over yet. It feels late in the season. We're getting there. Obviously, it's gone by pretty quickly for what was a season we weren't sure we were gonna have. But definitely love doing these shows. And Dean, appreciate you hopping on with me tonight here. Great show.
Yeah, happy to join you. And of course, this weekend, well, Sunday morning, yourself, myself, we're on 3 hours before Sunday morning. We go 3 hours straight for content as far as the main slate. Basketball is right around the corner. I'm just a little bit rattled because speaking of basketball, I got the 11th pick in my draft. What up with that? Come on, man. The 11th pick? Why do I want that? It's in 13 minutes, 12 minutes. And also I'm making lineups at the same time. These are the world's smallest violin playing for me. Yeah, I am flustered. Yeah, the 11th pick? What do I do with that? Come on. All right. People don't care about that. One more time, we'll drop the link in chat for you guys as far as the promo code $10 off, depending on which package you want here at RG. Thanks, Devin, for producing. Tyler, sign us out of here and give the people the player you have to take it down tonight. Who's the guy that's for sure 100%, like no ifs, ands, or buts, going to land in the optimal?
I'm sticking with Eckler, man. Like I said, I'm just hoping the captain ownership goes down some with all these last minute changes. So you guys know where to find me. Find me on Twitter at ToeTag and Tambo. Appreciate you, Dean, coming on and doing the show with us. Other than that, thank you and good luck.